There are more troubles ahead for Rishi Sunak's government after they broke their own promise to remove EU laws from Brexit Britain. Well, now this week in Parliament, we have the Brexiteer MPs coming for Rishi Sunak. Okay, it's going to be a big week in the Westminster Village. We're going to have the few Brexiteer MPs that we have left to the Tory MPs, because we have, obviously, the majority of them have voted to leave and all that, but a lot of them also decided to concede and essentially make concessions, go along with people like Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak over the last few years and say, well, Brexit is a problem that we need to solve instead of an opportunity we can embrace. Okay, it's a classic Theresa May mentality. This week in Parliament, it's going to be chaos in the European Scrutiny Select Committee. So we've got the European Scrutiny Committee, which is basically assess the legal and political importance of EU documents deposited by the government in Parliament. Since the end of the post-Brexit transition period, the committee has focused on EU documents that fall within the scope of the Northern Ireland Protocol to the EU-UK Withdrawal Agreement. The committee holds regular evidence sessions with ministers on UK-EU relations and undertakes the thematic inquiries into the affairs and everything else. Okay, so this is basically the select committee that we have. Now, Rishi Sunak thought he'll be smart if he appoints certain right-wingers into difficult jobs. So he gave the Home Office to Suella Braverman for her to fail. And he also decided to give a very big opportunity to Kemi Badenoch, but actually make her the new scapegoat, an easy target for her to fail. So for all the Conservatives and all the Brexiteers to attack her, saying, well, you're the face of this project and you failed, so we're going to come for you. And Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt could just sit back and say, okay, let's just continue our work. The Conservatives and Brexiteers are eating each other. Let them enjoy that. And this is the problem. It's happened so many times. When the government decided to make a U-turn recently on the EU laws removals that they promised themselves, Rishi Sunak promised during his leadership campaign, within the first 100 days, we're going to do it. We're going to start the process. And then they said, well, we can't really do it. So we're going to just revise about 600 of them and see if we can amend some of them, if we can remove some of them, but the majority would stay. We didn't hear from the Prime Minister. We didn't hear from Jeremy Hunt. We heard, they basically just pushed Kemi Badenoch forward, saying, you go and give the public some bad news. So everyone's attacking the messenger. And the problem is that Kemi Badenoch just went along with it. It's also her fault for not speaking out. And she's completely been a good team player. Ooh, such a good team player. Now, the person who's going to be leading this movement in Parliament this week is, yes, Sir Bill Cash. Bill Cash is very robust. He doesn't have any patience for nonsense. He's more straight talking, and he's worked so hard over the last few decades for the cause of Brexit and conservatism in this country. And of course, every single time there's some sort of obstacle, whether we have a Labour government or we have a wet left-wing Liberal Tory government, he continues to be in Parliament to continue to fight, because what else can he do? He can't just sit back and just complain from the outside. So he's going to be leading this. Bill Cash said these things, saying Parliament should not be railroaded into a deal that has not had sufficient time to come to an educated choice over whether to process or renegotiate, which will be unlikely to happen if the government were to rush ahead, particularly if the EU wishes to do so. So he said all these things before, and he's been giving warning as a member of Parliament, as a backbencher, as a member of the European Scrutiny Committee, as a veteran of the Conservative Party. Do you think that anybody at the top of the Conservative Party or the Conservative government ever listened to him? No, absolutely not. They completely ignore either the veterans or the young, fresh, new members that they have, or the actual 17 million people who voted to leave the European Union. They are completely going with their own arrogant, narrow-minded approach to Brexit, because they continue to see Brexit as a problem, as I said earlier. And this is the whole issue, because your environment will influence your behavior. That's just normal in life. So when you're a government minister, when you're just a politician in general, spending every day in Westminster, and you're hanging out with all these civil servants and all the hacks and all the lobbyists, you have the same narrow-minded view about certain things, and they all become arrogant about their expertise, then they say, well, I read something, so I know there's only one approach to this problem, and you keep listening to that, and then it becomes an echo chamber, and then everybody's become arrogant. So when these people, these civil servants, and all these arrogant so-called experts and advisors, where every time I bump into one of them in a pub in Westminster, and I just overhear conversations, if an ordinary person, and this ordinary person could be a very, very expert lawyer or something, and says, have you guys considered doing this? They just laugh and say, haha, you don't know how things are in government. We are in government. We know how things are. You don't know what we do. This is just not the right approach when it comes to our so-called democracy. But this is exactly the behavior we're having from people who are stuck in that black hole of Westminster. It's time to drain the swamp of the establishment. Now make sure to share this video. We're going to come back in half an hour with more updates. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.